Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the one and only, and yes, CEO of Hemlane. How you doing, Dana?
I'm great. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. We're going to come out pretty hot. We're going to play a game of ping pong is what I call where we go back and forth on a particular topic. This one is the importance of leveraging Hemlane or like application for out-of-state investors, right? When I started my career 20 years ago, it would have been nearly impossible for me to even consider it. My market was 2.5 hours away, and it might as well have been out of state.
Yeah.
Applications, technology, smartphones have really removed a lot of the headache and risk. But I thought we should go back and forth maybe 3 times each. You were the guest. Why do you think using a system like Hemlane is right for out-of-state investors?
The first one is building a team. So when you think about out-of-state investing, you cannot do everything remotely.
God, no.
You need boots on the ground. Now, those boots may not be a full service property manager. It may be a leasing agent combined with your handyman, combined with someone who's overseeing whatever it may be, communal areas. But you do need a team. You need folks on the ground, someone who is there. And so by using a system, you can get the right people on your team in there. You can set permissions. So you could say, hey, this is my leasing agent. They can do anything, change the marketing prices, update the descriptions if too many tenants have questions about who pays utilities, whatever it may be, but they can't collect the rent. The rent only goes to my bank account. And so being able to build a team, I think, is really important in out-of-state investing. You can't do it all. You shouldn't do it all. And so that is one reason to use a system where you still get that flexibility and power, but you are able to have other folks help you.
Yeah, the biggest thing in Hemlane, it's actually in your pricing, right? Is you can basically select what you want, right? What level of service do you want and all of that? And I think that was a pretty genius decision whenever that was made years ago to say, hey, what do you want? We'll make it flexible for you. The one for me probably goes back to my accounting background. And it was really what smartphones and applications have really brought to bear. And that's just the audit trail of communications. You got to remember, as an out-of-state investor who has a full-time job, I have moments in time, and I don't have the best memory during the day fully caffeinated. I can't imagine that in an environment of high stress. Again, time zones, you're out of state, you might be across time zone. What is 6 o'clock there is 3 o'clock here, and or 9 o'clock there is 6 a.m. here. And it's just, it can get really confusing. So for me, the biggest thing right out of the gate was that audit trail, because I hated searching my email, hoping, documenting, blind copying myself. It was just an unfortunate night. And that was with a couple of houses. I couldn't imagine trying to do that today with the portfolio we have. It just would have been non-functional, frankly. So that was my first one I always go to. What do you got next?
Yeah. And that's a great one, because you are correct when you're like, oh, but that maintenance, let me just quickly search for it, of like that topic, and making sure you can get directly to it. The interesting thing when you don't use the system, because the system does do text messaging, when you don't do it does text messaging and email. So it communicates with the tenant how they want, but everything funnels back into the system. If you aren't using a system and you're using your Gmail coupled with text message, one, those text messages don't hold up in court a lot of the time. And two, then you're like, wait, was it text message with this person? Was it an email? All of that. So you have like it all in one place. So my second one is consolidation of your portfolio. Doesn't matter where the location is. So I agree with you, Michael, that don't buy one house here, one house here, one house here, and have to build your team in 10 different places. But there is a point where you say, I have a couple of properties in this location, and you may consider diversifying. You may say, I do want to go to another place. Now that I've got this down, I'm going to diversify and go somewhere else, get a different types of tenants into my properties, not have like the same pool. And in that particular case, it is really good to have a system that it doesn't matter where you are, you have one system to look at all of your properties. And you can, it's sort of like what you do in business and marketing of A/B testing, where you say, how is this portfolio and area doing versus this portfolio and area? And a great way to do that is have everything in the same system, where you're tracking everything and it already does that for you and lets you know, hey, this portfolio is performing better than this one. So you could kind of get some of those institutional things, obviously at a smaller level. You don't have as many properties as an institutional investor, but you can really capture and gain that value of the data.
Yeah, I think a lot of investors, frankly, diversify too soon, or they just come out sporadically, like onesie, twosie, heresie, theresie, with no real plan. So I'm certainly not a fan of that. But that said, now helping thousands of people, hundreds of them have property onesie, twosie, heresie, theresie. And I got to tell you, I could not imagine not having Hemlane or like application to be that like that single veil or vision or prism or whatever you want to call it into my portfolio. Can you imagine having this thing from here and that one there? Oh, somebody's stealing. Somebody's going to steal from you. I just don't know who it's going to be. So I love that one. So the next one for me is kind of ease of the big things, right? What I mean by that, for example, is marketing, right? You know, maybe you're comfortable at marketing on apartments.com. Well, you know, there are others, and, you know, you provide the ability to kind of put right in one place and then go out to, I don't even know how many, 32, 40, I don't know what they are now, but kind of a push of a button. So the key to sometimes is the most eyeballs, right? The most eyeballs win. Yeah. And I think that's hard, because otherwise people are going to get lazy. They'll go, you know, apartments.com or Craigslist or Zillow, but they won't do the others. And you're missing the market. So one of the things that I saw very early was the ability to kind of create your listing and then like push a button and it just goes out. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, having a qualified tenant in your property and getting them there in the shortest period of time so you don't lose rent and vacancy is incredibly important. And what's really interesting about that, Michael, is the SEO is different for different cities. And
of course it is. Of course it is.
It's like search engine optimization. So when you go and you say apartments in Denver, the number one website is not necessarily the same as when you say apartments in San Francisco. You know, it could be, now it's called Rent, which is the Rent Path Network, but that could be number one. They're now called Rent, or it could be Zillow, or it could be apartments.com. Like, you don't know. And in your market, that might change over time. Last year, Zillow was winning, but then apartments.com just raised money or took some more funding in, and then basically went out there and
bought all the keywords.
Yeah. And so you don't know what that's going to be. So it's important to make sure you're advertising everywhere.
Awesome. What do you got for your, I think it's your third and final one.
The third one, I do believe this is really important because I've seen it firsthand. When you have a system in place, tenants think of you as professional. They think of you as a property manager. And it's very, very important to set up a business for success. If you are doing emails initially, not having a qualification system that shows everything's going to go through a system, you know, rent must be paid on this date. You're going to get late notices on this date. If it's not paid, we're always following the lease. I'm going to follow the lease, but you have to follow it as well. If you don't have a system set up, tenants will take advantage of you, and you'll actually attract professional tenants, like a professional tenant. So someone who usually knows the law very well and can use that to get around things and not pay rent or extend their time period there to delay evictions. Those types of people, if they see you're using a system like Hemlane, they're not even going to inquire about your property. Yeah. But if they see that you look like a small mom and pop who, you know, maybe they can convince you that you should accept their doctored credit score document that they bring a PDF of or whatever, they will try to do that. And so just showing that you are professional with it and it is treated like a business will set up that relationship. And that is something that will reduce the stress and anxiety. And, you know, you might always have great tenants, but there is a certain time period where the longer you're in the game, you do notice that personalities come into it, and it's people business. And so with the people business, you definitely want to make sure that you have the right processes in place.
Yeah, my final one really is, there's really only, being a landlord most of the time should be kind of boring, like watching paint dry, right? Especially if especially if it's single family homes, right? Yeah. But there's 3 points where you got to get right, and a system does that for you. One is tenant selection, right? Just like you have a buy box, you should have a tenant criteria. Everybody's treated the same. There is no, all of those things. It's just like, hey, if you're either in or out,
Yeah.
this is it. Next, for me, it's not even rent collection, because that should be like watching paint dry. They know there's a lease, they know they owe, or there's an eviction. For me, it's repair requests. I've seen repair requests not treated with the urgency sometimes that they should be.
Mhm.
Right. Just because it doesn't bother you doesn't mean it doesn't bother the tenants.
Yeah.
And you have to realize, again, you're in the people business. So treat them accordingly. Now, everything isn't fire, flood, or blood, but it's also not 8 days to get back to them. Right. So again, realize that this is a customer service business. Treat it with the right, process and procedures, which is why you have a system. And then the last one is checkout, right? When they leave. And a lot of this is around the deposit. And if you don't have a process to document up front, you're not going to have one at the back end. And man, you just, you want to have a fight for a couple of bucks on the back end. If you don't have a system, you can't get there. So Hemlane does that. Others do as well. But these are the reasons I wish I had something like this when I started all those years ago, and it wasn't email, Excel, voicemail. I don't even think texting was a thing when I started. So pretty amazing. If somebody wanted to play with the 30-day trial, which you have, and you have video and PDF on how to use it, where would they go?
Yeah, go to www.hemlane.com and just mention one rental at a time, so that you get 20% off your first year.
Awesome, folks. Again, Dana was gracious enough. If you are one of my students, which are adding hundreds a month now, there's video in there on how to play with the trial. And if you just want to get the free course, there's a PDF. So, you got time this weekend. Go play with the PDF and pretend to be a landlord and go play the game. Thanks, Dana.
Great. Thanks.